Willkommen, bienvenue, and welcome back to Scrap Mechanic with Lyte. And here I am in a fancy new race car. It's red, so you know it goes fast. And since it's a fast race car, this is going to be a pretty short episode. Let's see how fast it goes. Oh, right. Probably need to turn it on. Ignition. Shabam. Let's try that again. Off we go. Okay, so it might need a little more weight in the front, but hey, look how fast it is and how quickly it stops. Well, it does kind of go kind of fast, but it's not a great race car. And look at all those switches. You probably know what those switches are supposed to do. They're supposed to make it manual, like that one back there on blocks. Kind of sketchy neighborhood. That one took several engines and added them together with a continuous signal to get various speeds. This one only has two engines. It's kind of hard to see from here. 1 and 2. So instead of having the 4 engines, 3 of which you add together, it only has the 2 engines, one going forwards and the other one going back. I wanted to test what happens when you give less than a continuous signal to this engine. So given how much we learned about one-tick pulses, I figured let's see how it actually works that way. Here we've got a 15-long snake which loops back on itself. Nice Ouroboros sort of thing. It's got a one-tick pulse rushing through it. That's what I push this button for. Goes into a one-tick pulse generator, sends it on through. That feeds into ores. There are 4 ores, one for each of these switches, that look at a certain number of these 15. So first switch just looks at 1, second looks at 2, 3 looks at 4, 5 looks at 8. And they ore it all together and then send it into an AND. The AND ends the ore with the switch to see whether or not the switch is turned on in a time when it's looking at the right logic element up here. And then that sends it along to here. This then sends it along to an AND, or a not an AND, with this button that determines whether or not it sends it forwards or backwards. That's all there is to this car. It sends a certain amount of one-tick pulses that are interleaved to these engines. And, you know, in theory, you send less pulse to the engine, you get less engine pulse, and it just goes slower, right? Well, that's where the science comes in and the fact that this is not actually a good car. Because if you hit it to 1, look at that thing go. Nowhere. It's pulsing for 1 tick out of every 15. It's about twice a second, a little more than twice a second. Because it's 40 ticks per second. And 1 every 15, 2 every 30. It's getting close. So we're going a whole lot of nowhere. So let's kick it up to 2. 2 sends us nowhere twice as fast. The wheels are pulsing twice as often, but we're still not going anywhere. Kick it up to 3. Oh, hey look, something hit something there for just a second, but it's still not great. How about 4? 4 is the lucky number. Wait, 4 is the bad number. 4 is death. In Japan, you know. Okay, so 4's not great. 5's bound to do it. 5. No. Still nothing really. 6. No. 7 lucky 7. Oh, that was the wrong button. 7 lucky 7. Well, we're starting to get a little bit of Bronco action here. It's more than nothing. Okay, let's turn all those off. And now we switch to 8. 8 is interesting. 8 sends you sideways. That's right. Crab walking car. When you fire the engine, 8 out of every 15 ticks. Now, it's not always the same side because we were going to our left and now we're going to our right. If you throw it into reverse, it doesn't necessarily send you in the other direction. It usually just keeps you going the direction that you're going. It's a kind of fascinating phenomenon. It's not strictly car phenomenon, but it's interesting. Then we get up to 9, 10, 11. 11 is about where it starts being a car again. And so we've got 11 out of every 15 ticks active. And due to the nature of the friction, I'm not sure this is actually any slower than having it fully activated. So here we are at 12, 13, 14, and 15. So 15 really does not seem any faster than 11 did. So let's kick it back down to 11. Like, you can hear a difference in the sound of the engine, and there might be a little bit of a speed difference, but overall you don't have much of a difference. Not really. And so if we turn those off, you can see this is not a successful prototype. This is not a new manual transmission car, or else I would have titled this episode Manual Transmission Car Mark II and gotten 20,000 more views. No, it's not a good car. But it is good science. We took something we learned somewhere else, tried to apply it to something we already knew how it worked, and we had a little bit of a thought going in how it might turn out. And I'm sorry, but this is probably not what you were expecting. Crab walking car, when you fire every other tick, was not what I expected. I doubt it's what you expected. Unless you're Brent Batch. Bet Brent Batch knew it was going to do it. He breaks all sorts of things. But all the rest of us, how would we have known that? What physics would have led us to believe that firing an engine every other tick would lead to sideways motion? Okay, so right now it's not moving so sideways, but it's very much not moving forward. So we get some interesting behaviors out of it with this new way of doing it. So if we want to make a car that does, in fact, go slower using this idea, you almost definitely have to use continuous ticks and then continuous downtime. Instead of going on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off, you go on, off, on, off, on, off. And hopefully that'll do something better, but I don't know. These engines are not meant for discontinuous use. At least not like without being in the chair and going forward, no, forward, no, forward, no. The logic control just doesn't seem to behave the same way, even when it's longer tick pulses. And I think publishing this sort of result is important. I could have just scrapped this and done another one and did a totally different episode. But it's important for you to see this sort of result. You need to see what doesn't work, such that you don't go, oh, I've got the greatest idea, and then spend a lot of time making this, and it does exactly this, and you didn't want it to crab walk. If you do want it to crab walk, you are awesome. But yeah, you need to publish these sorts of results. It's just good science, letting people know what does and doesn't work. It's just as important to show what doesn't work as what does. It might not save the world a lot of effort, but it's going to save someone a lot of effort. And it helps you to remember that scientists are just people. They make the same sorts of mistakes you do. You don't know everything going in. That's the point of science. You don't know it. That's why you do it. Yeah. So, as much of a failure as this is as a race car, it is not a failure of this game. It's not a horrible thing to have had happen. I mean, this alone is awesome. I love it. I don't see any practical use for it because you could just point the wheels that way, but I think it's awesome. So don't be afraid to make things that don't work, because everything that doesn't work teaches you something. Anything that does work, you probably already knew what it was going to do. You already knew all of the things that go into it. You didn't really learn so much as you implemented. This is learning. And speaking of learning, next episode is probably going to involve compactifying my timer, setting it up, and measuring all sorts of things. Like cars going, people walking, things falling. I don't know how many I'll be able to get through in one episode, and I don't know how long it'll take to compactify my timer such that I can make a nice blueprint that I can just paste all over the place. But we'll see what we can do. But that's all for this episode. I will see you in the next episode of Scrap Mechanic with Lyte.